This podcast is really to bring joy and awareness back into our journeys of change, progress, and success. It's really so much more than just here's a few tips and, tricks to help you get the goal or achieve the goal that you want. It's really about relationships. It's about relationship to yourself and relationship to others on your journey to freedom and fulfillment. So I hope you love it. I hope you enjoy. If you do get value from these episodes, I'd absolutely love it if you hit follow, as this enables us to bring more and more amazing guests onto the podcast. Today's guest is a certified functional nutritional therapy practitioner, founder of the Nutrition Gateway podcast, an entrepreneurial mum, international bestselling author, and regenerative farmer. She's passionate about helping women find nutrition solutions for their health that are simple and sustainable. She says nutrition and her research about nutrition led her to God. At just 6 years old, she was diagnosed with a rare autoimmune condition. This then morphed into unexplained food sensitivities, mood disorders, an eating disorder, mental health conditions, and an unhealthy body image. Heading into her 20s, she began having debilitating migraines, which were so severe they led to chronic anxiety attacks, often ending up in hospitalization. With no luck in the conventional medicine space, she then took the natural health route, dabbling in Bowen therapy, Reiki, massage, Chinese medicine and acupuncture, naturopathy, and more. She became so curious in alternative and holistic medicine, she left her real estate career and business of 22 years behind and invested the next 10 years of her life becoming a certified nutrition therapy coach. She's now the CEO of Holding Hands Wellness and is obsessed with sharing new advances in holistic health that supports the body's ability to heal itself and empowering women by teaching them to understand their bodies. Hi, Sally. Welcome to the Closer Than You Think podcast. I'm super excited to have you.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
So I guess the first thing that I want to just jump straight into is your story. Just a little bit about you, how I actually read your story on your website. It is incredible. It's really, it's tough. Like I was reading it and got teary because I was just like, I could relate in some ways, like just to, the journey and just how tough it is, but how it's also led you like to your purpose. But yeah, I'd love to just hear it from your own words.
Yeah, absolutely. So in my childhood, I had, unbeknown to me at the time, a vaccine injury, which makes sense now that I've put the sort of puzzle back together.
In hindsight.
But yeah, absolutely. And so they thought I had leukemia. My platelets went really, really low. I was then at about the age of 5, heavily medicated for about a year. They would constantly do prick tests, and I was in the cancer ward for about 4 weeks, just, doing that exploration around what was going on. And then as a child came kind of things like bedwetting, food sensitivities and aversions. I'd start getting hives with different foods, and I would sleepwalk, and then I would have just really presentations of anxiousness, etc. And I don't think my mother, who was a single mother, really copes with that very well. So there was a fair bit of violence, and, just she was doing the best that she could. And that kind of just continued. It went on to, being on the contraceptive pill, and then getting really, really sick, like going wacko. Like my body just did not agree with the contraceptive pill. Then came bulimia.
What age were you at this point?
So I would have been 17 or 18 when I went on the contraceptive pill. And then sort of just due to, now I know clinically, the B vitamin deficiency, because of my body's tendency to chew through B vitamins, just really threw me, and I got quite mentally unwell. Like I wasn't very balanced, and that led to body dysmorphia, which was not the case. I did not need to lose weight, but in my head I genuinely felt that I did. And then I just threw myself into a property career. So I kind of left school halfway through year 10, just going, this sucks, I don't really want to continue on this journey. I'd gone to 7 different schools. I'd moved house like 35 times by that age.
Wow.
And I just wanted to get out into the workforce to really be financially independent, to, not have to be at home and just, move out.
When you say
So,
that, I'm like, actually, when I think back, like, I wish that option was available to me, because I probably would have done that, like left school in year 10, because I really was not, I just didn't feel like it was an option to me. I think in our household, it was very much like, unless you finish school, you know, it's like, would probably be punished in some way, but that's what it felt like. But now looking back, I was just so ambitious and so driven to just be financially secure in myself. Like, I probably would have been better off, yeah, finishing year 12, because I think there's just, without going too far off track, but there's really this shift in just education in general, right? Like, if you're not really, I mean, education is super important, but it's like, if you're not academically inclined, you feel like you're not going to pursue that path, or it's just not the right thing for you, and your brain works differently, or you're more creative, like entrepreneurial and stuff. Sometimes it just is like, doesn't really make sense. And I kind of love that we're going in that direction. I think it's going to serve a lot more people in better ways. Yeah. Anyway.
I think it's time that the education system recognizes that there's multiple ways to learn. Some people obviously have, more of a visual learning style and they move quick, and others have more of a
100%.
kinesthetic
And we
learning
just
style.
stop seeing it as like a failure, or as something that's wrong or bad, or like, totally.
And we've all got our gifts, but I guess ultimately when you've got classroom sizes of 30 plus, the teachers are doing the best that they can. But I think that was probably the biggest blessing, was leaving halfway through year 10, doing a traineeship, and then pivoting into property, and then starting at the bottom, but then ending up owning my own real estate practice.
Yeah. Amazing.
Yeah, but I got really sick. I fell pregnant quite late in life. I met my husband quite late in life. The minute that I met him physically, I just knew, I just said to him, I'm going to marry you. And, that is the story. That is what happened.
Yeah.
But I kissed
a
lot of
that way
frogs
with my partner too. Yeah. It was just
exactly.
it's just a deep inner knowing. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And that resonance came with, a pregnancy that followed shortly thereafter. And then I sold my real estate business in 2016, and we moved to Victoria. And after my first child, and just a really disempowered birth, and I just got really sick. I got very, very severe postnatal depression. I was really super anxious, and everyone that I kind of went through on that journey couldn't really give me any insights. And so this autoimmune that had presented in my childhood came back strangely. So I started to explore like what foods would help, and I found a podcast. And I remember, moving from Sydney to Melbourne, and just on the way to Melbourne, just listening to podcast after podcast from this one presenter.
I love that, because I feel like my journey kind of started similar, like as in when I was in my work, when I was in my full-time career, in my marketing career, I started listening to podcasts, and they were like the Gary V's, and I was just so inspired and motivated by them. But I had no, like, it was like there was no plan. I just started listening to them while I was at work. And then, it's weird. It kind of, if those things lead you down certain pathways, and like here I am doing my own podcast now, which I never in a million years would have thought that I would have started. So yeah, it's like funny how like those aha moments come from different things that you follow in your life.
Yeah. And again, like podcasts were easy to digest. And I just remember listening to one naturopath on hormones, and I was just crying. I'm like, this has been my world, my story for so long, and no one's been able to give me answers. And I then removed gluten, and I removed another, few foods that I deemed inflammatory. And I started on the GAPS protocol by Dr. Natasha McBride, which is very extreme. I don't know that I would recommend it for the faint-hearted, but, slowly I healed, and it got worse before it got better. And so
you attribute that all to your diet, like the food that you were eating?
Yeah, wow. Absolutely. In the early days, yep. And I came across a therapeutic supplement, which was just fruits, vegetables. It was actually a network marketing product, which I thought, well, I've got nothing to lose. And I also went on one of the omega products that they had, and I was incorporating more protein through protein shakes. And I just went from strength to strength. I went from about like the horrid of 9 out of 10, like just barely functioning, to, a 6 out of 10. And then that gave me the strength to then, go deeper and continue on that journey of just navigating how foods made me feel, and re-educating myself around the food pyramid.
Yeah.
But ultimately then And I fell pregnant with my second son, and then shit got real. Excuse my French. Sorry.
Yeah.
Things got really real again. I got really sick again. My body, pregnancy really depletes the body.
Mm-hmm.
And, if you start late and you start from perhaps a baseline that's, depleted, then I can guarantee you that pregnancy ain't going to really add much to that. It's going to further deplete. So there's got to be that nourishment piece. Yeah.
So did your diet change drastically when you got pregnant?
I think with my first pregnancy, it changed nothing. I didn't change anything. I was still drinking coffee. I was still, eating lots of refined carbohydrates because that's what you're craving.
Yeah.
But with my second pregnancy, absolutely. Yeah. It was very much anyone generally with an autoimmune condition should look at removing wheat from their diet, even if it is short term, just until they correct their platelets.
Yeah.
I found it very, very powerful in my own journey, but subbing out bread when we're so used to having breakfast bread, lunch bread, dinner carbs, it's a transition. So
carbs is carbs is the biggest thing that makes me put on weight.
Yep.
When I was living on the Gold Coast, I was pretty much never eating carbs. It just wasn't in my diet, and I knew that the wheat in it was also extremely overprocessed and just bad, and I could just feel, even if I ate a piece of bread, I'm like, I'm putting on weight as I eat this. Like, I can feel it, like just the heaviness of it. But yeah, it has slipped up since I've moved here. I live in a small country town, and I'd love to talk to you about that because I actually did a health workshop just on Friday with a friend. I host and facilitate sister circles like once a month here.
Awesome.
And I was doing a nutrition workshop with a health coach here. And we were talking about just the difference in not only the quality of the food, but just the options that are available in these rural areas. I don't know, where do you live in Australia?
So we're in Mudgee. So we're in New South Wales.
New South Wales, okay. Yeah. I'm in Gunnedah. So it's
cool.
It's like a population of like 7,000 people, very small. And the options are just not there. And so you kind of, well, for me anyway, even though I'm pretty educated in the health area, like I know what things are good and bad for me, I could definitely be a lot better. But I definitely, when I moved here, I just couldn't find as many options. And so I was resorting to things like that just weren't that good for me. And so I'm trying to balance that out again. But even so, like the quality of food here is it's really not that good. Like you can taste the difference. Like food is just, like I used to go to the organic farmers markets on the Gold Coast all the time, and here they don't have them, which is weird because I thought there'd be more here because there's so many farms and there's so much land, but people don't, like there isn't. And so, I'd just love to hear your tips on because I think that's going to be one of the biggest things that, especially for busy moms, women, working women, like things that come up, like just, in terms of nutrition and how do you find, or how do you just make better choices? Like that was the thing that came up in the health workshop, because it's like, even with my partner, like he eats meat and I don't. So it's like then making two different meals. But how did do you find that in your town? Like, do you have organic markets, or like, how do you?
So I found the same thing. I was absolutely flabbergasted when I moved here because the produce section of organic in Coles here is like,
I know.
like this, and everything feels very, or in Woolworths, it feels like it's been sitting there a little while. And so I actually tracked down a local farmer through just asking some good questions, who was doing a large range of produce, and I would drive 1 hour every fortnight to go and pick up my veggies. And then what happened was,
that's really smart.
A group of us got together, and so some friends, and we all decided that we would once a fortnight we would take turns. And so each week each fortnight one would go. And then eventually I got to the point where I said to the farmer, look, I don't want to drive with my two kids in the back a 3-hour round trip. How many people would I need to get to buy from you in order for you to come to us? And he gave me a number. And so I just started a co-op. And so technically now,
so resourceful.
Well, I was like, I either drive 3 hours a fortnight, or I coordinate the same amount of people, and then we get the food delivered to us.
So I'm so doing that. I want to find someone who does that. Like even if it's an hour away, and I'm sure I'd get people, because one of the things we talked about was the fact that there is limited options, and also there have been shops that have opened up, but people don't support them, so they close down.
I think there's still a very significant disconnect between the disadvantages of glyphosate, which are, allowed to be used in New South Wales, and the power that that has on affecting our health. I think that,
it's only allowed in New South Wales, is it?
There's 2 states. I can't recall what the other one is, but recently we've enabled it. We've also enabled GMO without labeling, from what I can understand as well. So I think navigating food choices is really going to get harder. And so finding a really good resource, there's a company called Honest to Goodness in Sydney who does bulk wholesale stuff. So again, if you've got 2 or 3 people together, one of you has an ABN, then you can set up a wholesale account. The minimum order is 500. So we'll do things like organic apricots dried. We'll do things like organic dates dried. We do things like chia seeds for chia puddings. We do things like big bulk 25 kilo rices, and we keep them here. Of course, you're going to have this space to either stock it or alternatively, share it within your community. But what you'll find is that most people eat typically similar. So, you can either go large and then you're saving money, right? So you're saving money, you're getting a better quality produce. Your shipping costs are split over 3 or 4 people. So true. Getting a better quality product. So, and nuts, they've got extraordinary nuts and things like that. So, if you're tending more towards a meatless diet and you're looking for protein options, you would be probably more inclined to go those nut options. So they've got insecticide-free almonds. And I think, there's lots of good options. And for your partner, grab and go. There's barbell meat sticks, which my kids love. It's a combination of kangaroo and beef. There's no additives. There's Chief, and they also do meat sticks. And then there's a favorite of mine, which is the gluten-free pasta ranges from Olive Green Organics and the Good Fish. They have fish that's wild.
Are these all online wholesalers?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you can get all your food online?
Pretty much. And I get it delivered here and then shared between the community. And so look, I think, when you are living regionally, you think to yourself, gosh, there's surely got to be more options here, but there's not, because the populace isn't there. So finding those, using good storage solutions and combining with your community, you can really sustain yourselves. I mean, I hate to say that takes money away for the small business that's local, but ultimately,
you have to look after your health.
Yeah, it's number one.
Yeah.
Right. What have we learned in the last 2 years? If you have fear and paranoia around your well-being, guess what?
And everybody values different things. Like, you can't force somebody to value what you value. And so, that is the hardest thing. Like, you notice in smaller towns like this, like I said, even if the organic shop's open, they're not supported because either the education is not there, the values aren't there. And there's so many factors, but you just, if you live here, you shouldn't have to, resort to your health deteriorating. But I will say I haven't been as resourceful as I could be. And I was asking around at the start, but because it was so difficult, I just kind of gave up. And so I do buy organic mostly from the grocery store, but sometimes I don't have it. So you just are like, okay.
Next
best. But I definitely, definitely will be looking into some more online options.
Yeah. And I think, that is part of the disadvantage of being in a regional area, is that you don't have access to, you have to be a little bit more structured and a little bit more planned, but it is available to us, and we're not the only ones that are going through that struggle.
Yeah. Yeah. So true. So your story, you really, you had autoimmune as a kid. You then kind of went into being on the pill, really struggled with that, had really chronic migraines, anxiety, and all of that. And so then you found the podcast.
Yep.
You started really listening to that.
Yep.
And did you hire a coach? Did you do anything like that? Or was it just all self-led? You were just I'm just going to do this all research by myself and myself.
A combination of both. I think I ended up getting a coach when I went through that GAPS scenario because it was so foreign to me.
What is GAPS?
So it's called the GAPS protocol. It's gut and psychology syndrome. So it's phenomenal for autism, for schizophrenia, from bipolar, for depression, etc., and dyslexia, dysplasia.
The gut is the second brain.
100%. Yeah. So what it does is it's repopulating the gut through foods that are really really digestible. So we're talking, broths, bone broth, slow cooked for short periods of times, particularly if there's histamine, incorporating probiotic bacteria through sauerkraut and at different increments. So there's sort of like this stage of dietary change that you can make I mean, then I went on and studied nutrition to further heal myself. And, you know, knowing what I know now, I kind of have a better appreciation that definitely GAPS is a place that you could start, but it certainly can feel overwhelming. It's very long duration of time.
Yep.
There are now, from what I know, there's probably quicker mechanisms to get you there, but ultimately you can borrow the book from the library. It's usually at most libraries, called the GAPS Protocol by Dr. Natasha Campbell McBride.
And so they walk you through like a process or a diet as well. Wow.
Yeah. So it's actually, that's what the whole book's on, and it's got clinical studies around, you know, some of the things, because she, from memory, she healed her son with autism from it, and that's kind of how it all stemmed. You know, it's like through our own adversity, comes the creation of
totally
of solution, right? Because we're all navigating the best that we can. And so once I studied this, I started to really then tune in, like, how is food making me feel? You know, what is my body trying to tell me? And that's where the real magic happens. And we're in such a busy world. You know, if you speak to anyone on the phone, how have you been? Oh, so busy. It's like a badge that we want to wear.
It's such a badge.
It's so weird.
I don't wear it like a badge. I actually consciously never say that word anymore.
Yeah.
I was so cringed out by it because it was told to me often, and I was using it sometimes, and I was like, I don't even like it. I don't even use that word anymore.
Good on you.
Even though sometimes I might be, but I just don't use that word because I'm like, it's really limiting, and it's really like it doesn't feel even good for the other person on the other end, because then they're like, okay, well, I just don't want to bother you, or it totally cuts all connection, I think. So not only does it stress us out, it cuts connection.
Well, it's not actually giving anything, is it? Like, it's just like, oh yeah, I'm busy. It's kind of like a rebuttal in a sense.
Yeah,
it's energetically
almost exactly. Like,
exactly. Yeah. So if I turn around and you said, how are you? And I said, I'm really productive at the moment, you'd be like, wow, yeah, tell me more.
Yeah. The words make such a big difference. Yeah.
Yes. So yeah, I went and studied, and then you know, once I studied to heal myself, and then I recognized, hey man, I've got this gift now, and I can't. Everything that I learned in the Nutritional Therapy Association Australia and New Zealand turned everything that I knew about health and wellbeing on its head. And it also stitched back like why symptomatically I was having the challenges that I was having and I had. And now, you know, knowing I have a genetic mutation called MTHFR, which means I don't actually methylate appropriately. Now, you know, 10, 15 years ago, from what I understand, the statistics are that 1 in 4 people had MTHFR. Now we're talking 1 in 2 people have MTHFR because of the amount of crossbreeding. And how do you
know if you have that?
You can get a DNA genetic test done. Ultimately, I think if we're more prone to anxiety and depression and mental health issues, and just, you know,
you probably have it.
You probably have it. I mean, there's a couple of key things that you want to check in with. You want to check in with, you know, how's the clarity in your brain? Like, do you feel like you have brain fog? Then the other things are, you know, what does your poo look like? You know, it should be a smooth brown sausage, and it should sink, not float. You know, that it should be a dark brown color, not a clay color. Like, so there's so many different clues that we have that give me the opportunity to kind of put my detective hat on and just go deep as to, well, what is happening? You know, is your gallbladder functioning optimally? Are you actually assimilating those healthy fats? Do you in fact even have them in your diet? And so we start to look at the clinical picture around, well, what is dysregulating your health? And for me, there was lots of stuff going on. Let's be frank. And I was just burning the candle at all ends. I didn't really have an understanding of when to stop. You know, too much caffeine, too many white refined products that I now know I have a gluten
sensitivity. And then working in a really high performance job.
100%. Yeah. You know,
were you single at this time, or were you a mum still?
Yeah, no, I was single. So I had a commercial real estate business in Darlinghurst. I was a partner of, and we had 35 staff in the team. And there were, before I fell pregnant, discussions of opening up 2 more offices. So I had not thought that I was going to find my husband or have children. And so that my career was my thing, right? But then that kind of, you know, all changed pretty quickly, which I'm very, very grateful for. And my children have been my biggest lesson, really. You know, they've brought me back home to myself.
Yes. Oh, my heart. Yeah. Wow. Okay. So when you started studying nutrition, that really is the thing that healed you, and your own research and your own obsession and your own passion with it.
Yeah.
That's amazing. So I guess what do you think with the women that you've coached and worked with and your own journey, like what do you think is the main thing that women struggle with in terms, I know this is quite broad, but with their health, but is it stress? Is it like environment and or just lack of education? Like what is the thing that you find most people, or do most people come to you already knowing like kind of this is what's happening and I just need help with it?
I think by the time that most people get to me, they're sort of saying, I'm sick of dieting, I'm sick of yo-yoing, I'm sick of kind of falling off the wagon. You know, I'm really good for a short period of time. And
Okay,
then
so
something
then,
comes up.
yeah, so my question is then actually, what is the result that they're looking for? Because for me, I know, like if I think back on my journey, like say 5 years ago, I was vegan for about 5 or 6 years, and I was very slim, very fit, very healthy, and it was really good. But it was a coping mechanism. I was very much unconsciously obsessed with not, being skinnier and all of these things. And now, even though I'm a bit heavier and all of that, I much more care about my energy levels. And I don't use exercise and I don't use all that as a coping mechanism. So yeah, my thing now is much more, I'm so obsessed with just having high energy levels and being able to sustain and just, yeah, be high performing in a way, because I have lots of dreams and goals and stuff. And so like that's really important to me. And so when I was vegan, even though I was, skinnier and all these, and I was considered healthy, right? Like I was eating very well, but I was so tired. I was so
Yeah.
tired all the time. And yeah, so there's just like and I guess maybe that's just stages that we're at, but I think the coping mechanism thing with food is actually really big because I wasn't aware at all what I was doing.
It's like, as you're asking me that question and as you're talking, there's so many things flashing through my head right now. Okay, so, the simple aversion towards meat, if it's not, primarily from an ethical reason or the sense that I feel better when I don't eat it, well, then that's usually a hydrochloric acid clue. And so if we're not producing hydrochloric acid, we have a natural aversion to sort of steer away from meats and feel better when we have plant-based foods. The other thing is we are all bio-individual. So what works for me and what works for your body and what works for I could have 3 clinical presentations of paperwork and they're all showing, wanting the same thing or the same outcome.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately the road to get them there has to be bio-individual, because ultimately we are all bio-individual. And I think, what do people really want when they come to see me? They want the transformation. They want that empowerment. They want the confidence to know how to eat every meal confidently for the rest of their life.
Okay.
And that's what we teach them, right? So what I'm really looking for is that, drop the guilt, drop the shame, drop the whole, I stuffed up and I did one meal bad, so that's it, it's all ruined. For some reason, I don't know why, women in this country, we have this view of we have to be perfect and it has to look like this.
Yeah.
Ultimately, let me give you an example. So let's just say I make a beautiful gluten-free carrot cake. Mm-hmm. And that carrot cake's got some incredible cheese, cream frosting, whether or not it's, plant-based or it's not, but let's just go there for a little while. And I'm like looking at that carrot cake going, I made it for somebody else, but I can't eat that. I can't eat that. That's going to make me fat. And so these are the subconscious things that we're running through our brain.
Yeah.
So we eat the carrot cake and then we feel full, we feel bloated, we feel miserable, we feel like we failed. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
Versus the analogy of, I made this beautiful, nourishing carrot cake. I am going to just absolutely sit down. I'm going to take my shoes off. I'm going to sit outside in the sun. I'm going to put on a cool music track. Look at you, carrot cake. I'm just going to, I'm just so excited. I'm going to just drop into my body for a moment. And that for me is always with my eyes closed. I'm going to fill my mouth with saliva to activate all the enzymes and the hydrochloric acid. Yeah. I'm then going to take one beautiful mouthful of that carrot cake. And I'm going to just close my eyes and just taste every single ingredient. I can taste the cinnamon. I can taste the carrot. I can taste, the texture of the nuts. Wow. And I'm going to let my body do exactly what it knows how to do. It's going to take all the nutrients from that incredible food and it's going to detox anything that doesn't serve me.
Yeah.
Where's the disparity in the energy? Which one feels better?
Well, obviously the
Second
one
right?
Where you're like, yeah,
But how many times do we do this in life?
Yeah.
We don't. We're sort of eating, we're eating in the car. I remember a horror story, I'd be on my mobile phone in my high heels with a sushi roll shoved into my mouth, walking up Oxford Street back to the office because I just didn't have time.
Yeah.
And, ultimately.
That is how most people live their life. Yeah.
100%. Why? Because we think that we're more productive when we're being idiots walking up the street with sushi rolls sticking out of our face while we're on a phone call. Like it's just
it's so backwards. It's like we've got to shift it. And the thing is, it's hard to do that when you're also surrounded by that. And I think even more so for women in career jobs, because we are unconsciously kind of competing with men.
But we're not the same as men.
And
we have different ebbs and flows. We have, and
we're not at all. Yeah.
We're using that as our superpower. Like instead of I don't know about you, but whenever I'm in flow, I make more money than I've ever made than when I'm pushing like a man. I'm 100%. Not a man. I have ovaries and I'm a female, and that's what God wanted me to be.
But that transition took a lot of deconditioning for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. Oh, me too.
I was in survival mode, and because I was in a corporate marketing career, and I pretty much only worked with men. The other departments that were like customer service or design, like they were actually mostly female, but I was the one in with all the men usually. And it's funny because then I made a full switch to like working with all women, and I found that really difficult as well. So, but that's because I was just on a different, I was in this entrepreneurial mindset, and it's very different to, when you're working in very kind of traditional corporations and things. Like there's just not a lot of leeway to be yourself basically, or just bring new ideas to the table. You just got to do as you're told, which is really hard.
That's not great for great for the entrepreneurial spirit.
Yeah, no, not at all. It just is, really suppressing to the spirit. But I definitely know it took a lot of deconditioning to just allow myself to first be. I'm like, I'm a woman, and so I'm not going to work the same way. And then I started learning about human design, and that's a whole other ball game, because I thought I was already reclaiming my divine feminine, but then I learned about human design, and I was like, oh wow, I've still got a long way to go, but I love it. I love the journey, and it's super fascinating.
We're constantly learning, aren't we?
But I think that's super important. The more I guess that word's quite broad, self-care, but the more we claim our feminine power, the more money we make, really.
Yeah. And it's available to us. But if we're not saying that I am enough and I am worthy to sit down and eat my meal over 15 minutes versus 5 seconds.
Yes.
And if we're not willing to actually recognize that the vessel that fuels our success and our love and our relationships and the depth of our character and our spiritual awakening and all those things are housed in this physical self.
Yes.
If we can't nourish us at a cellular level and at a soul level, to truly encourage ourselves to know that we are enough.
Yeah. One thing I love about the health journey and just nutrition is that it does bring you back into your body and remind you how important it is, because even as spiritual entrepreneurs and just, high performing, women, it's like we do sometimes get into that, even the mindset game and just wanting to outsmart things and just be more efficient and all these things. It's like it does take you out of your body sometimes. So you really do have to. That's why things like yoga and even just working out, and that just does bring you back into your body. And then even that, being more conscious of how you eat your food, and like you said, I'm enough and I deserve to sit down and have this nourishing meal. So true. We just don't do that enough until you become conscious of it and you really take your health seriously.
And it's usually the crisis in health that enables us to start to look in, which is, that's just human behavior. We don't, it's not a problem until it's actually a problem. And then at which point we have that awakening within yourself. And that's my own journey.
Well, there's a thing that Oprah, I remember her saying, she was like, what usually happens, I don't know if it was about intuition or if it was usually it's the universe will throw a pebble at you. It's they throw a pebble and it's okay, are you going to listen to that? Then it's a bigger rock, and then it's a bigger rock, and then it's a boulder. And so you want to get it when it's the pebble, when it's really, really small. And it's if you start noticing things, really take it seriously, even if it's really, really small. So, and it's kind of a fine line between that and then always worrying, because you don't want to be always worrying as well, because that's also not good.
And you know, if you are in that headspace, I mean, I didn't really even know that I had anxiety until I didn't have it anymore.
Yeah.
And you know, that's that methylation piece. You know, you might think you're high functioning, but ultimately that stems from, you know, an anxious place and fear of or lack of. So, you know, we are more than the food that we eat. We are the emotions that we hold, and we're the subconscious beliefs that we have at a cellular level that we don't even know are sitting there from, you know, past traumas or events. And we have mechanisms in this society now to shift these things. And so, you know, that's one of the reasons why I partnered up with Zoe Boyce, who's my business partner, naturopath, but she does NER, which is naturopathy, emotional release. And so I have been dancing with this for 20 odd years, you know, coffee to go up, 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 and then high performing all day long, and then wine at night to go down, 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 down. And so I'd been on this roller coaster.
That's so true.
Coffee, wine, even though it was organic wine and it was organic coffee, I was still fueling my being from a place that wasn't authentic. And so one of my more recent breakthroughs with working with Zoe is that I haven't touched a glass of wine since Boxing Day, and I just don't feel like it. I don't feel like I'm missing out. I actually just simply aren't thinking about it, which is very unusual for me. So I think we go through life healing, but in layers, because our body and spirit can't do it all in one step. So we might do one thing and then we'll learn more about human design and we'll sit with that, or then we might do some NER and we'll sit with that, and then we'll change, you know. But what we've recognized is that from taking people through the program, we have to remove some of those subconscious beliefs before we can get the shifts that the client wants. And that's why we've kind of done things the way that we have with our Nourishment Gateway program, because we realize that, you know, you might not want to deal with food first. You might actually want to deal with some mindset stuff first, shift that, break down those barriers, and then deal with nutrition, because we all have self-sabotaging behaviors, which at one point in our life protected us or served us or kept us safe. But, you know, as a 40-year-old plus woman, they may not be serving you any longer. So it's about asking, what can I let go of that's no longer serving me?
What about the other thing that's really, I think, can not like hold people back, I guess, like, is actually the familial structure and like the relationships that you have in your family? Because I've watched a lot of podcasts. I can't remember who it was with. Maybe it was like a Tom Bilyeu podcast or something, but it was like, even if you want to change your health, say, like, you're like, okay, I'm ready to change everything, and then everyone in your family is like not on board with the diet, or even like they're making fun of you. Like, the drinking thing is a big one. I'm really proud I haven't drank in like over 10 years. So that, and alcohol was never really a vice for me. I did used to have it when I was like from 18 till about 21. I was like going out and drinking like just on weekends, like one night a week. But I always ended up on the Sunday with a hangover, and I used to hate it so much. And I was like, why am I doing this? Like, I actually have so much fun just going out without the alcohol. Like, I don't need it. I was doing it, I don't know, to enhance my experience maybe, but really I only ever felt worse. And so I just stopped. But I definitely have a love affair with coffee. That's a huge thing. And I do notice when I don't have it, it's huge crashes. But that cycle of coffee in the morning, wine at night, like, that's a huge, roller coaster, isn't it? And then you take one of those out and you'd just be struggling. But the family thing, like, and the relationships and that we have around us can sometimes really hinder that. How do you think people should support themselves in those kind of situations?
I think, again, it's knowing yourself. So for me, I knew that wine was one of the last pieces of the puzzle, and I was feeling like there was a level of knowing, like, and I'll use the word, you know, for me, God didn't want me to drink anymore. And I knew that that was what he was telling me, and I wasn't listening. So therefore I wasn't being true to myself, and I wasn't being true to that relationship.
It was always like this kind of just the inner knowing. I love how you said, nutrition led you to God. That's really amazing.
Yeah, totally. Because when we start to, we are assaulted from our toothpaste to the brand of coffee with mold. We are assaulted to, the ingredients and preservatives in food, glyphosate that stores in wheat, where it's everywhere.
It's everywhere.
EMF, computers and everywhere there's layers that we could peel back. And when we have those things that our body is trying to detoxify or remove or protect us from, ultimately, it creates barriers to our connection to source. And so even fluoride in tap water, there's been lots of studies about it calcifying our pineal gland, and that's connection to God.
The water in Gunnedah, it's full of calcium. It's the worst. There's so many things here that I'm just like, it was hard for me. Like I noticed it, not just in I noticed it just in my body and everything, like how much it affected me.
Absolutely.
So
so I think we've got to look at this bio-individual piece, and we have to know, be mature enough to actually say, what's serving me, what's not serving me, and then cast your vision. Like when it really comes to, I want to change the way that I eat, Simon Sinek does a beautiful why, analogy where you go why 5 deep.
Yes.
I can tell you right now that when you do that process and you really are being authentic with yourself about why you want to make these lifestyle shifts, you will get to the root cause of why you actually want to do it. And when you really connect in with that, like that real authentic, the one that makes you sob. Your story, that's what's going to create lasting change. Now, I can tell you right now, being somebody in Australia, we have a huge, the pandemic is really actually more about drinking alcohol. You go out and you say, I'm not drinking for whatever reason. And people are like, why? Are you pregnant? What's wrong with you? You have to make excuses.
So much peer pressure.
Yeah, for not poisoning yourself. And same with children. Children are going to school, and in these classrooms, the teachers are giving away in kindergarten and year 1 chocolate frogs for them doing their work. Now, what are those neural pathways that we're creating?
Really?
To reward ourselves with sugar.
That's
now, when
crazy.
100%. And so I think, as a society, we need to shift and change. This message of the food pyramid, it needs to be flipped upside down. We need more of those healthy fats. Our brain needs protein to function. And a lot more than we give credit for. Realistically, 19 to 35% of your protein intake per day, which is more of those ancestral ranges, is optimized. And that's what optimum health feels and looks like. So that's balancing your blood sugar. It's basically enabling you to go to sleep. If you're waking up at night a few times to urinate, these are huge blood sugar clues. If you're getting that 10 a.m. and 3 p.m. dip and you need a coffee at those times, bing, 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 alarm bells, adrenal function, there's lots of stuff that we can tune into. If you have to go outside and wear sunglasses and you just can't tolerate the sun without them, then this is a huge adrenal clue. If you clench your teeth, there's thousands of these I could share. And it's all being tickled by the feather or the pebble, as you mentioned it. Don't wait till what I waited.
Things get real bad.
Yes, don't do it. Just kind of tune in, give yourself a bit of space. It's called margin. Like finding margin in your life. Find 1 or 2 things you can say no to, where you can actually go within and say, you know what, am I really happy? Am I really happy with the way that I feel? Am I happy with the way that I'm digesting food? Am I happy with the way that my poo looks? Am I happy with my hydration status? Am I happy with my sleep? And do I feel, when I wake up in the morning and my feet hit the ground, do I feel, yes, I'm ready? Like, yes. Or do I feel like I could press the snooze button 12 times and still not feel energized? Because I can tell you right now that I used to be the snooze button 12 times, and now I jump out of bed and I am so energized.
That's amazing.
Which enables us to fulfill our entrepreneurial purpose, whether that be spiritual or making wealth and, whatever your thing is. We're not all designed or wired to go and be wealthy. Some of us, it's not our priority, but it doesn't mean that we don't need health in order to get there.
Yeah, totally. In anything that you're doing.
Yes, absolutely. And so this is a God-given right that we have. We're so disconnected from our bodies, and we've disempowered ourselves. We go to these doctors and ask for solutions, and the only tool that they have in their kit is pharmaceutical drugs. And you might go and get all the tests done, and you come back and they're all normal, which is my life story. Everything was normal, but I never felt normal. Just because it's common doesn't mean it's normal. PMS, not normal. Period pain, not normal. Menopause, not normal. Migraines, brain fog, not normal. Like all of these things, they're not, this is not our body's way of saying, hey, hello.
Yeah, my period pain can be really bad. And I know I used to live with a roommate, and she was always like, it's not normal to have, and I'm like, I know, I've just had it all my life. So, and some months it's worse than others. What would you say, what's the cure to that? Or is that just a holistic thing again?
So, you know, I would want to look at the entire clinical picture to try and find out, because your body will have a foundational priority to heal, right? So for some people, this is what's called, I call it the conductor. It's the hypothalamus axis. It's the connection point between the pituitary, the adrenal glands, and our hormonal system. Yeah. So when our hormonal system is dysregulated and there's pain and inflammation in that region, assuming that you've pulled out the foods that are inflammatory for you, you've then done the deeper healing. You've got to kind of look at hormonal stuff as a consequence of what's happening further north, because God made us north to south, right? We you know, food goes in this way in the hole at the top of our body at the north point, and it comes out at the southern point. And so everything in between, that's the functional part of being a functional nutritionist. We start to look at where is in this system, where is it actually broken or maybe not optimized? And we start to look at you know, bringing in some, you know, some tools to really support you in that regard. So with PMS, I would definitely be looking at blood sugar, because what you find is that the two are really tightly connected. And particularly if you are finding that as a vegan, you're really flat. Yeah. We need that protein profile. Like I can't stress it enough.
I know for sure I could definitely be eating way more protein. Yeah.
And you're not alone. Like there's some days where I don't. So all I would say to people are, you know, if you're struggling with waking up and you're urinating in the middle of the night and you're feeling like those dips and flows and you're having this PMS stuff, but just change breakfast out. Start with breakfast with more of a, you know, so some beautiful spinach, some almonds, some soaked chia seeds. You know, there's so many phenomenal options out there that aren't that expensive, but just start breakfast right.
Yes.
And then, you know, once you've mastered breakfast for lunch.
So true. Dinner. Yeah. So you recommend starting your day with protein? Like,
yes, 100%. Yeah. That's the best thing you could do for your health. And also dropping mindfully into your body. So really making sure that you've got that, you know, your whole mouth is full of saliva before you take that first bite, and that you're chewing slowly and actually enabling your teeth to do their job, instead of dumping these large globules of unprocessed foods into the stomach and intestinal tract, which you're making all the wrong organs do all the work, right? Yeah. And so we start to look at that anatomy, physiology, that north to south process, and start to go, okay, so what are the top 3 things that if we were to support Tanya's body, that we could bring you back into balance? Yeah. And then so consequentially, you'll probably, well, in most cases, period pain goes away. Yeah. But it's about getting that profile right.
I noticed like some months are worse than others, and I've never fully tracked why, but I would definitely say like I just generally feel better, or my diet's better or something during that month. So yeah, that makes a lot of sense. The other thing, what was I going to ask? How should people, like, you know, because I definitely go onto Google and just Google recipes, and just, you know, that, so there's that question that's always there of like, what's for dinner, or, you know, what are you going to have? Like, do you recommend people plan things? Because one thing I noticed even on when I started my business 3 years ago, the first thing that went out the door was my health, which is because when I was in my career, actually, I was probably the most healthy, because I had that switch off. Like I could switch off at 4 or 5, and then I was focused on other things, or in the morning I had all the free time. Whereas like as an entrepreneur, you have to be really mindful of those switch off points, and like your mind is always on. And I was just so consumed with, I had a pretty rough journey though. Like I got fired, and I wasn't really ready to go into entrepreneurship, but I like had to. And so there was a lot of that, but the health was like the first thing that went for me.
Mm.
And I knew the whole time, I was like, I know this is not good because my energy is going down and like things are, you know, I need to look after my health first and foremost. So then it kind of became this like battle of the balances of like, what am I focusing on? And yeah, it just became really, and the more I planned, like the better it was. But I also value my freedom a lot. So sometimes I just don't plan.
I think the best way to think about food, and, you know, we've gone away from the three veg and meat, right? We've gone away from that because it's no longer cool. So we need to be all master chefs, and we need to really, you know, forget it, like just simplify things. So how I, you know, I don't have it here because it's in my clinic, but I've got a plate, and on my plate, I'm going to have a slither, which is 10% of that plate as a healthy fat.
Yeah.
So what I would say to most people is just pick a healthy fat. Now, my favorites are extra virgin olive oil.
Yeah.
And then you know, you could put a squeeze of lemon juice, a little bit of salt, you know, you could perk it up. You could put, you know, some other citrus fruits in there if you like. That could be a dressing, for example, if it was a salad. So I'd have all my leafy greens, then I would have a percentage of protein, which would typically be the size of my fist. And then I would make sure that, hey, where's my healthy fat? And I'd pull out my salad dressing. And so I would drizzle my salad dressing over that. And so the other elements to that, if you're more plant-based, you could go a handful of seeds and nuts. So you go pepitas and sunflower seeds. Or you would go some slivered almonds or something like that, or pecans, or, you know, something that lights you up. So you've got that healthy fat profile, you've got your leafy greens, you have your protein element. Now with dinner, you could have a whole bunch of poached chicken in the fridge, which you've marinated in oregano, some salt, some pepper, you know, like whatever fresh herbs are cheap or whatever dried herbs are cheap. Just poach it all, freeze it in batches. And so then you're looking at your plate and you're like, well, okay, so where's my veg? You know, we need 8 cups of these a day. So how are we going to get in 8 cups of, you know, that's a lot of veg when you think about
it is.
So, you know, pick whatever's in season, whatever's cheap, you know, try and steer clear of the starchy sort of style, you know, and go more the brassicas and the broccolis and the cauliflowers and stuff like that, but assuming that your body tolerates them, and you will start to understand and know. And then, so you've got your veg, you've got your healthy, your protein source, whatever that be for you. And then you go, my favorite healthy fat is actually garlic butter. So I buy the organic butter from Aldi. And then I just whiz in a magic bullet, some garlic and whatever fresh herbs I've got. And then you put the butter in there and you whiz it all up, and then you get baking paper and you roll it. And then you keep it in the freezer. So then comes to dinner time and you go, I've got a tiny bit of poached chicken. I've got my healthy fat. Here's my, you know, my better veggies, and don't make it any more complicated. Like,
and so,
you know,
and that should last you like a few days, or
and this is the other thing, like you can reuse that. And so one of my go-tos is always the olive green organics, or the good fish jars of fish, because they already come with extra virgin olive oil. They're line caught. Mackerel is obviously really oily, so it's phenomenal for women's menstrual health and our brain health. And so you've got this little jar of fish, and okay, they're expensive, but you could use half the jar for this lunch and half the jar for the next lunch, and it comes with the extra virgin olive oil. So if you're at work and you're busy, then that could be the go-to. You can also snap blanch like a whole bunch of veg on a Sunday night, or do a big tray of roast veggies on a Sunday night, and you could pair that with soaked and activated quinoa. If you're into quinoa, you could do it with a little mound of rice. You could do it with, you know, and so this is, we've gone so far in this direction of, we have to make it really interesting every night, that now what grandma used to make is no longer cool. It's like, well, you know, that generation was actually really healthy.
I know. Actually, now that you say, you're like, just put, you know, a whole bunch of veggies in the fridge, like in the oven, like on a Sunday night. And I'm like, that's so true. Like, you could just save it for the week, and like, here's my veg for dinner for the night, or whatever.
Or breakfast, like eat it for breakfast. Why? You know, we want to do cereals, but, you know, poach it. You could boil an egg. You could have 4 or 5 eggs in the fridge, and that could be 2 or 3 breakfasts. There's all these like
really conditioned ways that, like, we think cereal for breakfast, veggies for dinner. It's like, you can have it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. There's this real, I wonder where that comes from, but I guess it's just marketing, and it's
marketing.
Thanks,
Kellogg's.
Seriously, like
the convenience food. It's like, it's not
that
convenient.
impacts culture so much. 100%. It's insane. Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
it's like, okay, you don't need to eat cereal for breakfast. Like that is not a
that's
thing.
the first thing I say with clients. Can we just please remove the
Move the
toast and
cereal.
cereal for breakfast?
Yeah,
Please.
yeah.
Can we just put in something that is
Because
of
it
the
doesn't
earth?
even nourish you. Yeah.
It's got no nutrient density.
Yeah.
And so now we're all of a sudden, we've just fasted,
So
breakfast,
true.
break fast. We've just fasted for 12 hours. And we're literally breaking our fast with something that's the equivalent of cardboard. And then we're pumping ourselves full of a couple of coffees. We're getting to lunchtime. We're having, a sandwich maybe, which might have a bit of lettuce and tomato on it, or
Yeah,
cheese if
but
we're lucky.
mostly just carbs and wheat.
Yep. And then we're getting to mid-afternoon, we're having another coffee, something sweet, chocolate bar. And then we're getting to dinner time, we're having pasta or rice. Now, I can tell you right now, if you've got blood sugar issues, which I was to the point where I was having monthly panic attacks, to the point where my blood sugar would get so low that I was having panic attacks. And they all sort of happened around my cycle. Now, if you naturally look at what the liver's responsibility is, it is to detoxify hormones, but it's also to manage insulin. So if you have blood sugar issues and your body's trying to manage blood sugar, it's going to prioritize blood sugar before it's going to prioritize your menstrual issues. So if you're having painful periods, you really want to incorporate those healthy fats at every single meal and snack. You're going to have an apple, put a nut butter on it. Are you going to have something in the afternoon that, you want to have, like, I don't know, you want to have a dip, have an avocado dip, make guacamole. It's so simple.
That makes so much sense. Yeah.
Incorporating those healthy fats at every opportunity to really take away that whole ebb and flow of this roller coaster that our blood sugar is doing, to even it out so that we can actually have that stable, consistent energy.
Yes.
Yeah, it's fun.
Wow. I love that. I love how we can optimize our bodies for and it really is an education thing. Because so one thing I will say, I grew up, there was really no nutritional education at all. Like I grew up on like white bread, white baked potatoes, pasta, Weet-Bix, everything was just white processed. Like my mum was really not educated in that area, even though my parents were always kind of, my dad was probably much more healthier. Like I would always see him eat fish but again, my parents are immigrants from Croatia. So my dad's from the Mediterranean, like where he grew up is the Mediterranean. So his diet was much more like fish and vegetables, and he was always really healthy. But for some reason, the mum actually has more impact, I think, on the children's. So we'd be eating that while my dad would be eating his like fish and vegetables. And like, yeah, when I look back now, I'm like, that's really weird. He could have been, a stronger influence in that area, but it wasn't. It was probably more my mum, and it was really not healthy stuff. And it wasn't until nobody was, I was the chubby one. My brothers were always really skinny and my parents were skinny. So like, they didn't probably think that they needed to worry about anything. And so it was like, oh, you're the chubby one, must be something wrong with you. But I was like, I'm just eating what you guys are eating.
Yes.
And all of that. And I'm, it was really bad for me. Like I was just probably more sensitive, and I was just
classic insulin resistance, right?
Yeah.
Like, so the insulin just couldn't metabolize.
Even from 2 months old, I was chubby already.
Yep.
So so I've always had to. So anyway, I had a best friend in high school who was, her parents were like, they were next level vegan. Like if you talk about like I've never seen anyone more obsessed with like their health, and just everything was washed in like the Kangen water thing, and like they were just, everything was organic. They didn't shop at even worse than that, pretty much. Like it was all just at like those token little organic shops that were just like really local. They were like they were super next level healthy and like vegan, and that really influenced me a lot because I spent a lot of time with her. And so I'm really grateful for that, because that really started shifting my education around diet and what I was eating. And like that influence was really good on me. And so ever since then, I was much more conscious of what I was eating. And then when I was about 23 or so, I went vegan all the way up until I was like 28 or something. So but I think if I didn't have that influence, I don't know where I'd be. I'd probably be having all these health issues and stuff, but I ended up changing that. Like I met her at 13. And so from 13 onwards, like I started shifting, like I just had that influence. Yeah. So I think that's good with women. Like we do share wisdom and all that. With men,
totally.
they don't as much, but with women, we like to share our wisdom around. And yeah, I think that's really cool. So
That's
like,
so
yeah,
good.
if you can get friends around you that are, passionate about that, it really helps.
And so, if somebody's struggling within those relationships within their family and they want to make change, but they don't feel that they have the support, ultimately, I think you need to just stand in your truth and say, you know what, I'm really grateful that you have found what's working for your body, but I'm going to navigate what's going on for me.
Yeah.
Because I'm not feeling
I think
optimized.
this is where support comes from outside. But see, because my best friend was so into that, it was like this support from outside where I didn't really feel, because if you are, if you're like really close with your family and all that, it's amazing. But yeah, if you want to make changes that go outside of that norm, it can be really hard because we're so wired for connection, and we're so many people bond over food.
Totally.
And connection. I know a lot of families that do. So yeah, there's just so much ancestral stuff there, and like emotional stuff and all of that. But it can be really difficult for people to make those changes. And so having the support or a coach or somebody who's just or like even just getting into communities and Facebook groups and where people are doing that can really support you in making those changes and like really tap in.
Totally. And then just asking yourself, is this something that would be right for my body? Because the answers are always within us.
Yeah.
We just need to learn how to ask the right questions.
Yeah. So true. So I was also reading, you talk a lot about intuition and food as well.
Yeah, so I did co-author a book called Intuitive Knowing Her Truth, which we went bestseller in 2022. No, 2021, I think it was. Gosh, it's gone. The time has just lapsed.
I know.
It's unbelievable. And so, I'm really keen to help women tune back into themselves. It's, I called the business Holding Hands Wellness for a reason. And it's because I just wished, I was so desperate at the time, instead of just going and seeing a practitioner or holistic or GP for one appointment, and then, taking the medication or the therapeutic nutrients that they suggest for a period of time and then still not feeling better. And I just had to create that accountability structure. When I was in commercial property, I would say to clients, like, if I don't lease your property in 90 days or sell your property, I'm going to give you your money back on your marketing, because I wanted to back myself. And that was my key point of difference. And so I took that philosophy and ethos into the health and wellness space to say to clients, like, I'm going to hold your hand. I'm going to get you where you want to go. And we're going to go there. So we've got, we created a framework of a program which people can take self-paced over 12 months. They've got all one-on-one appointments as well, plus group sessions, 24/7 chat support. So if you're stuck, you need inspiration, you've got a question about what's going on with your health or how you're feeling, or you've got a migraine and you need support, or you're, just, we're there. And the reason why I did that was I know that when I was at my darkest of darks and my lowest of lows, I needed someone at that point in time, not when they had an available appointment 4 weeks later.
Yes. Yeah.
Because it's not how it works when you're on your healing journey.
So
like
true.
you want someone to hold your hand and take you there. So we all have the power to heal within us. It's just a matter of understanding what our body's trying to say. And that's, I kind of look at myself as a bit of a translator until I can educate women to actually understand the language of your body, because your body's trying to tell you things every single minute of every day.
I know, it's so true. So do you connect that to even the food that you eat? So like, say if I wake up, or say if I have, say if I bake vegetables on a Sunday night, I'm like, okay, I'm going to distribute this, I don't know, throughout the week for dinner or whatever. What if my intuition says, like, I don't want to eat that? Like,
good. You unfortunately
you should listen to that. Like, you should listen. If you don't feel like it, just don't. Like,
just don't
do something else. Okay.
Yeah, because often that feeling is your intuition saying that, like, if you don't like
else, or
if you don't like leftovers, you could have histamine issues.
Yeah.
And so you're flaring up your histamine, and so that's setting off your immune system. What's a histamine? So it's kind of the way that our body reacts with an inflammatory condition. It's like an allergic reaction kind of going on within our.
I don't really like leftovers. I really don't. It has to be something really like I'm obsessed with to want to eat it. But generally, I don't like leftovers. Yeah.
Yeah. And so that will often be people with and they won't like sort of fermented foods as much as other people. And so we start to look at, well, what else is coming up, you know, clinically that might sort of tell us what is the story behind this? Is this because there's leaky gut, and what's happening is, you know, the food is transferring from the epithelial lining of the large intestine, which is the thickness of a hair, back into the bloodstream, creating an inflammatory response. So if you've got weight you can't shift, then I would say, like, if that's one of people's goals and they've done all the things in inverted commas, then it can be, you know, that lymphatic system, the immune system's kind of telling you or trying to tell you, hey man, there's something not right here. And so pulling out those foods that are creating those sensitivities for you are going to be part of that picture. So you start to navigate in with those food sensitivities and really get clarity on what foods are working for you. And beetroot, cabbage, avocado, and coconut oil were not right for my body at different stages of my healing journey. So, you know, most nutritionists would say, use this, use that. Well, again, we're all bio-individual. We don't all like the same things. And if you're a parent, you know that if you've got more than 2 kids, they never eat the same thing, which is really frustrating. But at the same time, we need to honor their bio-individuality.
So true. Yeah, that is very.
Kids are really good at knowing, you know, apart from obviously their taste buds have been hijacked by modern foods. But if you put your children on more of a natural diet and not many processed foods, you'll find that they have a natural aversion to different ingredients.
Yeah. So what would you say to that? Because that was another thing that came up in the health workshop, was like the wives or the women or the mums of the house that are having to make like 4 different meals, like one for their husband, one for them, 2 for the kids. Like, it ends up being, how is that sustainable?
So what I would say, and what we do in our home, is you're plating up. You're learning how to plate up. You've got your protein source.
Yeah.
You've got your veggies. You might have 4 or 5 different vegetables. They might be cooked in different methods. And then you've got your healthy fats. So take a healthy fat tray. So butter, olive oil, coconut oil, flaxseed oil, if you've got hormonal stuff going on, you know, your vinaigrette with etc. Put it on the table. Take all the vegetables cooked separately in different bowls onto the table. Take your protein source onto the table. Let everyone construct their own meal based on what they feel like they need. And so whatever isn't eaten goes back in the fridge and can become lunch or dinner for the next night. And so what you'll find is your kids will naturally gravitate towards what they need nutritionally. Wow. And so you can have a little serving of nuts or seeds on the side, and your kids will love eating like that, right? So, and there's
a reason make it more of like a buffet.
Make it more like a buffet. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. That makes sense, and that makes it much more practical.
Yeah, and I think, you know, we've just all these master
we overcomplicate it.
Yes, all these master chef shows have made us feel like we have to do, you know, these incredible meals, and like true. It's like, really, do we, or could we just keep it really elegantly simple?
Like, just cook some veggies, cook some chicken, cook some whatever. Yeah, okay.
Yep. Yeah,
I love that.
And so marinating, you know, buying your meat in bulk is a great way to save money. You know, marinating it at that point where you just basically marinate it in whatever it needs to be marinated, freeze it, and then defrost it the morning of, and then you just, all you're looking for is you're sourcing your veggies that night. And where's my healthy fat? You have to keep asking the question, where's my healthy fat?
Yeah. Okay, I love that. You also talked, I saw you talked a little bit about environmental burdens. When we remove our dietary and environmental burdens, we begin to heal. Is that kind of what we spoke about at the beginning? Or
yeah. So you've got EMF, you've got the things that we put on our skin. So electromagnetic frequency. So what's being emitted from us 24/7 from these technology devices, our Wi-Fi routers, 5G, you know, like, we're getting assaulted. Our body isn't actually programmed to deal with the frequency of.
Okay.
And so
what does it do? What it makes?
It can keep you up all night. You can have restlessness. You can get actually really chronically ill if you're highly sensitive.
Yeah.
So there's a great podcast that I did with Gerard Beanie from Orgone Effects, and he shares quite deeply on that as well. So again, like, I will be doing a podcast with someone who's just brought out a really awesome research paper on EMF very, very soon. So stay tuned for that. But I think the thing is, we, again, based on that bio individuality, we've got mold. Like, I had mold exposure And that, as somebody that has MTFHR, that can really mess with your health. And so
where's the mold come from?
So for me, it was a leak in one of our bathrooms, but in a previous environment, it was we were on the ground floor apartment in an apartment in Sydney, and it had flooded multiple times because the sewer system. So what had happened is there was a presentation of mold on the ceiling, black mold all over the apartment, and we were living in that and sleeping in that, and mold spores love to recreate, and a lot of us, particularly with methylation issues or genetic defects in methylation, can't tolerate mold, and it can really wreak havoc with hearing your heartbeat on the pillow at night, elevated heart rate, insomnia, chronic frequent waking, so we've really, if you just not
legal, shouldn't they legally have to get rid of that? Or
it's a very grey area at the moment, and particularly with all the flooding that we've had in northern rivers and things like that, there is just a bit of a problem right now. And of course, EMF amplifies mold growth. So we've sort of got this new, everybody wants faster technology because we hate the little lag screen. And so now naturally we have this problem where we're actually our own worst enemies in this regard, So there are so many clinical clues, and the toothpaste that we use, the water that we're drinking, the EMF, the mold, what
toothpaste do you suggest?
We're using at the moment EcoStore, so you can get that from Woolworths, and that's the one that we prefer. It is $4 more expensive than all the other ones that are full of stuff that you shouldn't want to ingest, but good water filter, good sleep, good hydration,
but all these little things make a big difference.
And again, you don't have to do all of them at once.
Just start small.
Just start small, start with breakfast. Once you've mastered breakfast, go on and just keep peeling the layers back, because the closer that we get to,
and you can't also just do it all at once anyway, because it is an identity thing too.
Totally.
You really have to become somebody who has that kind of breakfast or has that kind of dinner. It becomes part of the identity, because there's the levels of change. Have you heard of that triangle, the levels of change triangle, where it's you can change your behaviors, but it's eventually, how people go on crazy diets and they change their behaviors and all of this, but then they gain it all back, and it's because they didn't actually become the person at an identity level. You probably identify, well, you're a nutritionist and you're a naturopath, and so you're just well, this is my way of life. This is just who I am. It's not even a question for you. It's just so ingrained in your way of being. And it's happened over how many years?
7 or 8 years. It didn't start, it started with one book and a couple of podcasts, and then it's gone on from there. I didn't change everything out all at once. And so
and I think we have this mentality that the slow growth is bad. I've even seen coaches talk about it, let's stop glorifying slow growth and all this, and I'm just okay. Because there's so much integration. If you're trying to transform your life, that's really what coaches are for. They're transformational. They're here to help you transform your life. And so if you don't know, and it's not saying that you have to, coach someone for 7 or 8 years, but it's knowing what stage of their journey they're at, and knowing that it's an identity thing, and that takes how many years. It doesn't happen overnight.
And the other part of that is obviously, is there any subconscious beliefs that are actually holding you back from having lasting change? And that's what sort of Zoe does. She really 100%. Looks at what
that's
are some
a whole
of the
nother
things.
layer.
100%. And so it does, I just want people to have hope that if they're struggling with their health and they haven't quite got to the bottom of the answer, then there is hope. And we are destined for wellness, and that opportunity to go within and really empower yourself one step at a time is available to you. And if you need help with that, then there's me, there's our program, but there's hundreds of programs out there, and if it resonates with you, just go for it. It's really, really fun.
So
And it has to be fun and light. Otherwise you just won't do it. If it feels heavy and yucky, it's just never going to be sustainable.
Do it in a community where you truly feel joy. And you feel you're making changes and you feel supported. And it doesn't matter if take a few steps back and like, yeah, because for me, even when I was living on the Gold Coast, like I really thought, that was my identity too. Like I was healthy, I was pretty much vegan, like I was very much, but then when I moved here, I kind of just went really, and I was like, a lot of things changed. And I was like, oh, I'm not who I thought I was. Like I sacrificed a lot of things, and like, yeah, so I had to really, and I realized a lot of that was coping mechanisms too. So like that's a whole other thing. Like life can just change like that. And until you I guess until you throw yourself into certain experiences too, you're not going to really know who you are. So anyway, I love that.
Cool.
Yeah, okay. So the last thing I want to touch on is food sensitivities.
Yeah. So ultimately I'm going to share with your audience, I'm going to give you a tool that you can share with your audience around food sensitivities. Okay. And so what that will do is there's a 3-minute test. So, you don't need to go out and spend $1,500 like I did on food testing.
Yeah.
You can actually check in with your body. So it's basically taking your pulse, understanding ideally what your blood type is, because that does play a role in that, dropping into your body.
How do we find out our blood type?
Your parents will often know.
Yeah, I think my parents do know. I just haven't thought about it for so many years.
Yeah, so your mum or dad may know. It doesn't make a huge bearing, but it does. So you're taking your pulse 1 minute. You're identifying what the baseline is in your pulse. So it could be say 75. Then you're popping one food ingredient in your mouth, and then you're retaking your pulse for another minute.
And you haven't eaten it yet.
You're not eating it, because if it's actually creating an inflammatory response, your pulse is going to typically go up.
Really?
And so you don't need to swallow it. You just need to keep it in those lingual neuropathways on your tongue for 30 seconds, retest. And so these are things that, you might do a food and mood journal, and you might start to really go, oh, I felt really bloated, or I had gas after that, or I felt really, pain.
Yeah. Is gas after food bad?
So it just usually is an indication of dysbiosis in the gut. So fermentation of foods not happening appropriately, and just honoring that north to south process, we start to go, well, why? Does this mean that we haven't got enough hydrochloric acid? Are we not chewing mindfully?
Yeah. So it's not really, it's not really just the food. It could be
a series of different things. So it depends what the food is. Like obviously, there's a few culprits which are more do make us a bit more gassy than others, like cauliflower, etc. But again, like it's just another way of your body communicating. And particularly if it's got like quite a foul odor, then you might go, yeah, okay, that's a real clinical indicator of dysbiosis. There's something maybe living in your gut that needs to be brought back into balance, like parasitic activity.
Right.
But again, we always look at, well, why are the parasites there? They mop up heavy metals. And so then we start to look at, well, do we have an exposure to, mercury fillings? So like there is such a big sort of, and that's what, part of our intake process is a 300 question questionnaire, just to kind of really go deep as to what is going on for you. And again,
is this
what
for
are those...
your one-on-one coaching program?
Yeah. So, yep. And so we really go deep on what is happening in your body right now, and how do we bring your body back into balance? Because again, everyone's different. So there's no point me giving generic advice when you need one particular thing. So the food sensitivity test you can do in 3 minutes. You want to do a food in isolation. So, and you'll if you did a food and mood journal for 3 or 4 days, and I might even give you a template of the food and mood journal as well. Then you'll start to have a look at the patterns between, are my poos runny? Because then that's usually an indicator of inflammation or inflammatory foods. So then you would go back and you could have something like corn or sesame seeds, watch for the transit time. So you'd actually look for when the corn goes in, the corn comes out. And that will give you a rough guideline as to how long things take in your body. And then you'll start to understand, well, what I ate 72 hours ago actually isn't agreeing with me. So it's not often the food that we've just eaten. It can be
if it doesn't come out, you mean?
So if you're doing the food sensitivity test, or if you're having an inflammatory stool. So like once you've identified, like, okay, corn comes out, it goes in, and then comes out 24 hours later. So your transit time is roughly 24 hours. And so therefore, if you're having an inflammatory response with your stools, you'll start to say, okay, what did I eat within the last 24 hours? Because that, then you can start to look at, well, what were the foods and what were the ingredients that I ate in the last 24 hours? You can singularly pulse test them. And then once you pull them out for a period of time, and you do some of that healing work, then theoretically you should be able to bring them back in again. But you've always got this pulse test to go from. So
yes, I've never heard of that. That's amazing.
Yeah. Awesome.
Okay.
Cool.
So I just have a couple of ending questions that I ask all my guests.
Sure.
I guess sometimes I ask business questions, but for this one, I'll just say, if you could only leave behind one piece of wisdom in people's hearts before you leave this earth, what would it be?
I'm going to go with ask God for help. Like, if you're suffering, you need to actually connect in and ask him for help, because we don't need to suffer on our own. And sometimes just having that divine wisdom and guidance can really bring us back to the answers that we need to get to where we want to go.
I love that so much. And then the last one is, if you fill in the blank, you're closer than you think.
If you slow your game down, you are closer than you think.
Yes. Thank you so much. That was amazing. Thanks, Sally.
You're welcome.
It was just so much wisdom you imparted on us. And there's so many helpful tips in here that is going to be a game changer for so many women. So thank you. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you.